Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. It is your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. Today, we are discussing a lovely pre-MELB H. Moser Cie Monard Centre Second. This is part of the family of watches originally launched back in 2006 with the inauguration of the modern Moser company, and it shows how far the company has come while retaining all of the elements that make modern-day Moser watches distinctive. Taking a quick look, it is 40.8 millimeters in diameter in white gold. It measures a svelte 10.9 millimeters thick, and surprisingly only 47.6 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip with a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Moser launched big, pinching no pennies. All of the early watches were exhaustively over-engineered and stock full of features, and this one is no exception. We'll take a look at it on my wrist. Despite the fact that this watch will run for almost 9 days if fully wound, it is quite compact and it easily slides underneath a dress cuff. Again, my wrist is 16 centimeters circumference. Because the watch only has a span across the wrist of 47.6 millimeters, it wears well on a smaller wrist, and I could recommend it for a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference, again, over the top, down the barrel, and then the cuff. The strap is upscale, and you can see large rectangular scale alligator leather with really large symmetrical scales. This is a very expensive cut of leather. It's medium brown with a semi-gloss finish, a monotone stitch. It has a narrow sheer cut side, and then there is calfskin on the bottom. It is a brand new Moser factory strap with no crimping and no gouging. You can see the buckle. A little bit different from how current generation Moser buckles are signed. It said H. Moser Cie in initials here rather than the Moser script like you find on the dial. So the buckles were even a little bit different back then, but you could see gray gold used, which is a type of white gold that never needs to be rhodium plated. It's white all the way through. It's the good stuff. It's what Rolex, Patek, and JLC use, for example. The case would live on into the MELB era. You would see this in the Endeavor family with these sculpted hollows in profile, the vertical satin finish between the hollows. And then we have a bezel here that's not concave like many of the Endeavors. It is stepped adjacent to the case, and then it has a little bit of a rolled profile. It's almost like it comes to a domed peak. And you can see the crown is conical and sharply knurled with a Moser M outboard. We have a little bit of a satin finish, but the dominant finish here is polish. Moving around to the crystal, which you can see has a little bit of a boxed profile. It sits over a no-date 3-hand dial, and it's a gray metallic sunburst, but the sunburst grain is very subtle. You could easily miss it. It's easy to see in person, perhaps less so on the camera. We have white gold indices, white gold hands, the better to resist tarnish and oxidation over time. We have the Moser script on the dial, and you can see these days, Moser doesn't even label its watches Swiss-made because it feels it's self-evident. Back in the early days of the brand, they thought it was important to label these Swiss-made, just so you know they're made in Schaffhausen. Now, pull the crown out, you activate hacking seconds, and I have to say, most withdrawn crowns, even on expensive watches, wobble around like a top. This one is rock solid, and there's very little dead angle when adjusting because you turn and the hands jump almost immediately. So there's your hacking seconds. The watch is manual wind, of course. The twin barrel movement, HMC 343, is rated to 7 days, but in fact, it will run to almost 9. It keeps best time for 7 days. Flip it over and you can see there's a lot to love back here. The movements were over-engineered, so you've got 2 barrels for a very even torque release. So unlike a lot of long power reserve watches that have one big barrel, think IWC, think Oris through the years, there's not a huge drop-off in amplitude or overrun. Despite the fact that the watch may be fully wound or almost discharged, because of the even torque of the twin barrels, the movement doesn't gallop and run excessively fast, and it doesn't run excessively slow as it discharges. With the twin barrels, you get a really long power reserve, but also an even torque release. You can see that it's a 26 joule movement adjusted in 6 positions. 6 positions is one more than a standard chronometer. The watch, despite its simplicity, is a complication with a power reserve indicator on the reverse side. There are several nods to the pocket watch era of Moser watchmaking, inaugurated by Heinrich Moser in 1828. Those include a 3/4 style bridge. It's not a true 3/4 because you can see it's split for easier maintenance. And the use of golden chaton to fix the barrel arbors, a nod to the era when chaton would be used for precision fitment of jewels, the jewels into the chaton, and then the chaton into the bridges held in place by screws. Screw heads are black polished. We have double crested Côte de Genève across the bridges. We have here a mirrored anglage, which is actually a little bit more mirrored than what you'd find on later Moser watches when they streamlined the production process. These look a little bit more artisanal, whereas today they're more obviously milled. And we have satination across the balance bridge, which is worth mentioning. It is a full balance bridge anchored on both sides with a free-sprung architecture for precise adjustment and shock tolerance. You can also see that the stud holder is beautiful. A little anti-whiplash spring with a black polished triangular stud holder. We have a handmade overcoil hairspring, so the watch will keep consistent time in any position due to the overcoil. Look carefully, and you can see that there is a solid gold 14-karat escapement, which reduces friction and the need for lubrication. All this beaten away at a pocket watch like 18,000 vibrations per hour. The escapement, the balance, the hairspring, the whole thing lifts out as a unit. This was an idea they had in the early days of the Moser company to make servicing a little bit easier. You can send the watch into your regional service center. This entire assembly comes out, a new one goes in, pre-lubricated, pre-adjusted. This is the most time-consuming part of any watch service, and they've got you covered. It is a gorgeous movement with a lovely pocket watch-inspired swan's neck click spring. You could see there's satination on the crown wheel. There's polishing on the teeth of the crown wheel. There's just so much to love on this case back, and technically speaking, the watch is virtuoso, water resistant down to 30 meters. These early Moser watches are rare. This is the H. Moser Cie Monard Centre Second. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.